Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and it's time for part 2 of the Q&A, so let's go ahead and knock this out. Alright, first question. Can 531 be done on a single lift only? Could you use the progression system? Sure, but why? 531 is intended to be a whole system. It's based upon working around 4 basic exercises that create a synergy with each other, and then doing supplemental work on top of that to build muscle where you need it and to get better at those 4 basic exercises. Do you see the problem with this of saying, hey, I'm just going to do it with a single exercise? It's kind of like when you get these people who do this, hey, if you could do only 1 exercise, you could do only 3 exercises. This is unwise. This is unwise because there's a synergy between that system. And I'm not saying that I'm a massive fan of 531. I will say it is one of the better systems out there. Okay, so that's where we run into a little difference of opinion. I think conjugate's the best way to train. But if we were not doing conjugate, would 531 be a viable and valid and good system? You bet. You bet. I think it's actually a good system. I just don't think it's as good as conjugate as a system. It's just my opinion. But that being said, why would you run this system for a single lift? Because keep in mind, if you're just running the 531 protocol for the primary lift on a single lift, you are not doing 531. Because even it's not just about just those 4 lifts. You do supplemental work with it. You're not going to just squat, bench, overhead press, and deadlift. Like, I hope you're not going to do that. People do that, but it's unwise. You're going to have major muscle imbalances, and you're going to limit yourself. Right? You're going to limit yourself. So I wouldn't recommend you do that at all. You could, but I don't think it's a good idea. I think 531 needs quite a bit of supplemental work, even on top of the 4 lifts, to really be vastly successful. All right, next question. How well do you target hamstrings when squatting all the way down on an Olympic squat or a bodyweight squat? I can tell you right now, a bodyweight squat, you're not going to do anything. Unless you are very, very, very weak, a bodyweight squat's not even going to grow your quads or your adductors. Okay, so let's just forget that one. Let's forget about that one. If you've never worked out in your life, it'll do a little bit. Okay, you've been working out for a month, a bodyweight squat's not going to do anything. It's conditioning work. Now let's talk about a deep squat. How much hamstring growth are you going to see? Almost none. That's like saying, and this is actually a valid comparison, how much bicep growth do you get from the bench press? You'll get a tiny amount. Actually, a lot of people don't know that. If you don't do any bicep work, you don't do any rows, any lat pull downs, any chin-ups, any curls, and you just bench press, your biceps will grow a little tiny amount. Okay? On a squat, for people who are put on just squat programs, even novices, when it's measured, they see a tiny amount of hamstring growth. It is a tiny fraction of what all the other muscles in the lower body get. Right? It's a tiny amount. Literally, any hamstring exercise you possibly come up with will cause more hamstring growth than doing 10 sets of squats every week. If you want a comparison, and I don't care what it is, a glute ham raise, a good morning, a Romanian deadlift, a normal a conventional deadlift, a hamstring curl on a machine, every single one of them will have the potential to cause 9 or 10 times as much hamstring growth as a full squat does. So I'm not going to say that it's zero. It's been found to cause a tiny amount in novice lifters. But if you stopped doing hamstring work and you did nothing but deep squats after you're a novice, your hamstrings will actually atrophy. They'll get smaller. They will not maintain the size that you built off these other lifts. There's not enough stimulus. A squat is not a hamstring exercise. Now, can hamstrings affect squat performance? Yes, because they're a very critical dynamic stabilizer. In fact, there's even potential for other external influence from the hamstring as far as bouncing off your hamstrings, if they get big enough, can actually help your squat. And they're a very critical dynamic stabilizer. So hamstring strength is useful for building your squat. The squat itself will not, and I repeat, will not build your hamstrings. And that's not my opinion. That is what the research shows. Certain styles of squatting, hamstring size and strength will impact your squat performance, but you will not be able to build it with the squats. You won't be able to build them. And again, not my opinion. This is very heavily supported by actual hypertrophy research looking at muscle growth. And it makes sense. It's a dynamic stabilizer. It's not a primary mover. Right? Just like the bicep is on the bench press. All right. Next question and last question of the week. Hey Jason, for an intermediate lifter running conjugate, how many variations is needed for max lifts and speed work? Speed work, 1 to 2 variations is fine, honestly, especially once you start rotating grips. And what do we mean by variations? I mean, I have advanced lifters who we don't do any variation on the speed work, at least for upper, right? And when I say advanced lifters, I mean, I'm talking guys benching 315 plus who are not fat, weighing less than 200 pounds. How's that for quantifying it, right? How's that for quantifying advanced? Bench 315 or more while weighing less than 200 pounds. Okay. We don't do any variation on their speed work. Some of them don't even have bands. Just do it with straight weight. We should rotate 3 grips every workout. That's what they do. One of my really advanced guys finally got mini bands he can hook up at his box gym. So he uses sometimes 30 pounds of bands for his speed bench now instead of heavy bands. We don't need a lot. Deadlifts, 2 types, right? You can rotate sumo and conventional. If you don't work well with sumo, you can do deficit pulls versus normal or block pulls versus normal. You have 2 variations. Squats, the same thing. If you have access to 2 barbells, you can rotate them. Rotate bands and chains if you have those. That's even better, right? Bands and chains. You don't need many variations there. For max effort work, as an intermediate, I'm going to say your bare absolute bare minimum is going to be 6 variations for upper and 6 variations for lower. You do not want to repeat the same lift more than once every 6 weeks in an intermediate. So it means you need 6 types of presses. Probably need 3 types of squats, 3 types of deadlifts. You can throw in a good morning, right? That'll give you an extra wild card, right? You need a minimum of 6 upper and lower lifts so that again we can go 6 weeks without repeating the same max. And again, you should be able to PR if this goes correctly and it goes right. You'll be able to PR every 7th week if you have 6 variations, right? Because every 7th week you'll repeat the same lift. Unless you're cutting, in which case that's not going to happen. So I would even recommend if you're cutting, I'm going to recommend 12 so that you have twice as much time so you can try to get a little PR while you're losing body fat. Okay. But normally if you're in a small surplus, I'm going to say as an intermediate you need 12 total max effort lifts. 12 total. 6 upper, 6 lower. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.